Hi, I'm Maddie, and I'm on a journey to reach Stardew Valley Perfection. I've been making videos, but the videos tend to be like 3 hours long. And that's great if you're trying to wind down after a long day of work or even fall asleep at night. But if you're someone like me who enjoys putting on a shorter video to eat a meal or complete a small task, well, that's just not gonna cut it. So, what I've decided to do is to create monthly recaps of our progress in the game. And so, this is the very first recap of our very first spring. Upon waking up, we came across some lovely parsnip seeds left by Mayor Lewis. Walking outside, the farm was a bit underwhelming and overwhelming at the same time. I got right to cleaning up and preparing for the first round of crops. I don't know what I was expecting exactly, but watering was a heavy task. After I finished watering all of the crops, I began collecting wood and learned how to craft a chest so that I could actually store some items. Now, I will admit that I took quite a long time to decide which color to make the chest, but can you really blame me though? After finally making up my mind, I put the items away and decided to head into town to complete the introduction journal quest. However, I quickly found myself distracted with the little worm sticking out of the ground, which actually revealed a library book! Of course, I had to grab the other forageable items too. Like, do you think I could leave them? Finally, I was off to town to explore and meet the townsfolk. My first stop was at Pierre's, where I ultimately spent all of my money. I couldn't really decide what crops to purchase, so I bought a little bit of everything. And when I say I spent all of my money, I quite literally mean I spent all of my money. I spent the majority of the day walking around and meeting people. For the most part, everyone was pretty nice and welcoming. I thought everyone's personalities really shined through. I just want to say I'm not normally one to believe in love at first sight, but I think I just became a believer. I also met George, who was a character to say the least. Ultimately, he told me to buzz off, so I did. Which led me to meet Penny, who was much, much warmer. Taking a stroll through town, I learned that you could dig through trash cans! And man oh man was my first day of dumpster diving prosperous. I found a pink cake, and then I found cookies, back to back. I spent the rest of the day exploring Pelican Town. I stopped by the beach and picked up a bunch of items. However, I discovered we still had to unlock a portion of the beach still. And not only that, but it would cost us 300 wood. Later, I discovered the playground and took the swings for a spin. I continued to forage for the rest of the night, finding a ton of goodies before ultimately heading back home. I turned on the fireplace and then tucked in for bed. And that was the end of our first day. A bit unsurprisingly, we leveled up in foraging. We also made back some of our money, but definitely not all of it. The second day was much, much calmer than the first. I met Willie at the beach, where he kindly gifted me a fishing rod. I didn't really fish on day 2, but trust that that is coming. I was absolutely determined to find the remaining 2 people who I had yet to meet, so I headed north towards Robin's home where I met Demetrius. I found him to be quite charming, but I might be a little biased since I'm a scientist myself. I headed inside where I found Sebastian's room. I felt a little creepy just waiting behind his door, so I decided it was better to wait in the hallway for him to leave his room. And just like that, I had finally completed the introduction quest. I headed to the exact opposite side of the map, south of the farm, to explore further since I hadn't done so yet. I found these spring onions that were honestly so satisfying to harvest. I came across this little abandoned house and wondered what that might be. I kept foraging through the forest before spotting Leah, who received my very first gift. Even though she was probably terrified after being chased through the dark woods, she accepted my dandelion gracefully. And just like that, day 2 turned into day 3. As I was leaving my house, I accidentally destroyed my room within seconds, learning you can move items around. Stunned and confused, I attempted to put things back the way they were. Slowly and carefully, I left my house. Since it was raining, I was determined to finally try fishing today. Of course, I had to partake in my new favorite activity before I began my day of fishing. However, I soon became painfully aware of my deviation outside of Pelican Town's social norms. Finally, I got to fishing, and I quickly realized just how hard fishing really is. Like, really, really hard. Ultimately, I gave up on the river after being humbled over and over. I headed down to the beach where I set up by the reef and started fishing. Here, I had a much easier time. After a long day of fishing, I had so many fish. I wanted to keep at least one of each kind, so I actually made another chest to help store some of my catch. Honestly, it seemed like such a funny concept that I'd be storing my fish in a random chest for safekeeping, but it worked great. I sold the rest of the fish and headed on to bed. We had a very successful day leveling up on foraging. Our troubles were well worth it, not only reaching level 1 fishing, but level 2 fishing. We also discovered that fishing is where the money is at. Day 4 was super uneventful. We spent most of the day collecting wood and other resources, and we even completed a task for Robin. And to answer Robin's question here, yes, it absolutely was. Friday sure made up for what Thursday lacked. We started off with a visit from Marnie, who had found a stray kitty. We immediately took in the cat, naming her Estrella. And just like that, we had our very first farm animal. Upon checking the mail, we were met with a super suspicious letter. Because why do you feel the need to emphasize that it's entirely legal? On a brighter note, we got to harvest our very first parsnips! We came across the merchant lady. Unfortunately, her first impression of me is me trying to slice up her piggy, but I swear I was just trying to pet it. Looking at her items, I was tempted to spend money I don't have, but ultimately chose not to. Up next, I finally got to meet Gunther, who told me all about the museum and donated my very first item. I figured I'd check the boulder removal, and that's where I met Marlin, who introduced me to the mines and gave me a bit of a scary warning. But hey, at least he gave me a sword, right? Immediately I dove into the mines. I'm not sure how, but I made it to level 5. I went to bed a bit late, but was pleasantly surprised to see that we made level 1 farming and level 3 forging. Saturday, our 6th day, was arguably even more interesting than Friday. I know, crazy, right? It started by us meeting Mayor Lewis in town, who explained that the old rundown building that we've been seeing is actually the old Pelican Town Community Center. He took us inside where we were possibly hallucinating these little green guys? I don't know, but Mayor Lewis seemed concerned. Jumping to the following day, we received a letter from the wizard asking us to come visit him in his tower. You already know we had to go, and let me tell you, if I thought we were hallucinating before, we were absolutely off to the moon after taking a little sippy sip of the wizard's potion. But trust, it was well worth it to become one with the forest. With our newly acquired forest magic power, we could finally read the scrolls in the community center and understand what the Janimos are asking for. So we headed back to the community center to drop off some items that we did have, which is when we completed our very first bundle! Completing our bundle unlocked a new room, the pantry and the fish tank. Later, we discovered the ticket booth in Mayor Lewis's house. He explained how it worked and how you can trade in tickets for prizes. Here, I kind of wanted to choose the more edgy option, but that's just not who I am. Hey, but I did think about it. We started our second week with a very rainy day, which was nice so we didn't have to water our crops. I decided it was a great day to take some of our items to the museum, but you know me, had to stop and do some dumpster diving. At the museum, I donated some more items. We collected our reward, which was cauliflower seeds. And then we decided to try fishing again. Absolutely determined to get that stinking fish that was bullying us the last time. And with a little patience and persistence, ladies and gentlemen, we got him. We went to bed a little early and found out once again our hard work was well worth it, leveling up to level 3 fishing. We began harvesting right away, getting our very first golden parsnip. We also realized that maybe adding those additional plots wasn't the best idea. Watering is very time consuming. Of course we had to water our kitty. Hi Estrella. We decided that today would be a good day to go mining, so we went and got started. We came across our very first infested floor and got right to fighting our way out. We quickly discovered our rusty sword is almost pointless. I was starting to think it'd be better to use a pickaxe instead. Here we came across a super cute slime. It was so cute that I almost didn't want to fight it. It took forever to slay. But once it finally was over, it dropped a magnet ring. I quickly put it on. Finally made it to level 10, where we finally got some shoes. Apparently we've been walking around shoeless. Took a small break to go visit Marlin at the Adventures Guild. Checked out this board here and realized that we had a far way to go. Went back to the mines, hoping to make it farther down, and ultimately we did make it to floor 15 before heading home. Went to sleep and got level 1 combat. Let's go! The next day I made sure to give Vincent a birthday present, but not before his own teacher absolutely slandered him. I went to the mines where I witnessed this really ominous green fog and monster frenzy sort of thing. The bugs just kept attacking and wouldn't let up. I really thought that this must be it. This must be the end for me. I don't know how I made it out, but it made me realize that we need a better sword and we need it fast. And just as we needed it most, we got a better freaking sword! We headed back home and went to bed, just to discover that we had reached level 2 farming and level 2 mining. On our 11th day, we finally got our very first green bean and made sure to store one for the community center. Feeling really ambitious, we accepted a quest from Robin and a help wanted request. We also stopped by Pierre's because we had yet to get enough golden parsnips, so we needed to purchase more seeds. To relieve some stress, we partook in our favorite activity before ultimately heading down to the beach. We had great success foraging on the beach, finding several clams and corals. On our way home, we stopped for a quick chat with Penny. but she shared some things that were, well, kind of concerning. Hey, someone check on Penny. A little while later in the day, we learned about this mysterious sewer drain. Not only did it frighten the children, but it frightened me. One thing's for sure, Stardew Valley does not lack mystery because right away we came across this really mysterious door. What is it doing in the side of the cliff? We also spotted Robin's lost axe. We promptly returned her axe, and I guess it wasn't a moment too soon, seemingly how she almost lost a toe. Completing our first task of the day, we went and headed straight to the mine so that we could tackle our second task of the day. Honestly, everything was going pretty well and our new sword was working great. Until we reached these really scary dark floors. There were these terrifying monsters that you could hardly see. They were truly nightmare fuel, but off to bed, I guess. We reached level 4 foraging, and we made a decent amount of money today. Finally, enough money to buy our very first coop. So first thing, we gathered our materials and headed out. I just wanted to make one tiny little stop beforehand. And of course, there it was, the red cabbage seed. I had no choice, believe me, I had to buy it, I had to. But I was absolutely determined to get money any means possible in order to get that coop today. And that's when it hit me. The wise words of Willie. If it smells, then it sells. So you know exactly what I did. I got to work fishing like crazy. Eventually, I had enough fish and sold them to make back my $1,000. And sure enough, we had 4,000 G's, enough for our coop. So we headed up to Robin's and got our very first coop. And I know what you might be thinking, why is she so excited over a coop? But what comes after coops? Chickens! Robin informs us that she won't be able to start working on the coop until after the festival, but hey, I'll take it. Spent the rest of the evening in the mines, making it to level 40. Can you believe it? Thank goodness, I was tired of the scary floors. But I did realize that there's probably a long way to go. Headed off to bed, realized that we reached a level 2 combat, and eagerly awaited tomorrow's egg festival. We headed off to the egg festival early in the morning. Couldn't decide on whether or not to buy these strawberry seeds, but ultimately I did. I socialized with my neighbors, and of course I had to use this little photo booth cutout sort of thing. So cute. When it came to the actual egg hunt, man oh man was I competitive. I just couldn't give up. I had to win. I had to. Now, I will admit that there was a little part of me that felt guilty about winning because, you know, the kids. But I was still super happy about it. When I got home, I put on my hat right away, planted my strawberries, and then headed off to bed. We reached level 3 farming! And just like that, we were already on to day 14. Immediately woke up and began picking up our harvest from our spring seeds. I decided to head to the community center to drop off some of our items since our chests at home were pretty full. Started with our fish, dropping them all off, and honestly was pretty impressed with the progress that we were making. Headed over to the pantry to complete our spring crops bundle. I headed back up to the mines, and while I was fighting this guy, he dropped this really interesting book. I did finally figure out that I was supposed to eat it, but how was I supposed to know that? I headed off to bed, marking the end of our second week of spring. Honestly, the third week of spring wasn't that memorable. I spent time in the mines, barely surviving monster attacks. Of course, had to admire this beauty from afar. In another lifetime. Also made some amazing progress at the museum. My lack of self-control once again put me in a bit of a pickle. But ultimately, I think I was able to make up for it. On day 16, our coop was finally ready! Let's go! But unfortunately, I actually wasn't able to buy a chicken yet because it happened to be Tuesday. Tended to our crops before heading back to the mines. In the mines, we came across this wearable dwarf helm. And I mean, just look at it. Isn't it so cute? The following day, we were finally able to catch Marnie in her shop to purchase our first set of chickens. We bought two, one white chicken and one brown chicken. On day 18 of spring, we spent the majority of the morning foraging for salmon berries since it was salmon berry season. I finally figured out how to reach the secret path over here. So glad those berries won't go to waste now. We finally took our geodes to Clint to break open for the very first time, revealing some really interesting minerals. Of course, we took them to the museum to donate them. Later on in the evening, we had this really emotional moment with Linus, where we learned that he also is an avid dumpster diver and hated the idea of good food going to waste. We also realized that Gus is a good, kind man. Not gonna lie, he made my heart waver a little. Sorry, Caroline. On Friday, we visited the merchant lady, and even though I'm supposed to be saving money, I had to buy this houseplant. I couldn't resist. Feeling a little guilty about my splurge, I spent the rest of the day fishing to earn some more money. Craving some social interaction, I headed up to the Star Drop Saloon to end my night. The bar was bustling with activity, not surprising for a Friday night. I chatted with everyone before heading back home for the night. Hitting the sack, we realized that we reached level 4 fishing, and unbelievably, we had already reached level 5 foraging. We selected Gatherer for our option. We also made back the money I had spent, relieving me of any remaining guilt. On day 20, we woke up to a rainy day and a good-sized harvest. Here you may notice that we actually get the final golden parsnip needed for the community center. However, you may also notice me cluelessly selling said golden parsnip. I gathered wood for the hopefully near future purchasing of a barn. Then we spent the remainder of the day fishing, also witnessing Sebas in his full angst. Honestly, super relatable. Ending the day with nearly 3K in profits. Sunday was another rainy day, but was super relaxed. We picked up our copper watering can from Clint's. We spent the entire day fishing, and I do mean the entire day. But hey, at least we made level 5 fishing. After some debate, we ultimately chose the fisher profession. We also made pretty decent money today. We started the final week of spring strong, getting our very first set of eggs from our chickens. Ordering the construction of our very first barn. Absolutely ecstatic at the prospect of owning cows. We hit up the old mines. You know, we have a sort of toxic dynamic, me and the mines. I can't seem to stay away for too long before I come crawling back again. The gratification of adding new floors to the elevator is hard to resist. Making it to floor 60! The following day was very similar. I began the day by tending to my fields before heading back to the mines. You already know, I couldn't stay away for too long, especially when I feel like we're so close to the bottom. Because in my head, there's probably 100 floors. By the end of the day, we made it 10 more floors deeper into the mines. The only downside to all this mining is that the payday kinda sucks. Day 24 is when things start to spice up. but maybe not in a good way. Attending the flower dance, we stopped at Pierre's little shop, but unfortunately we couldn't really afford anything. Wanting to participate in the dance, we decided to ask the person with the most hearts. Even though I was nervous, I kept reminding myself that the worst they could say is no. And that's when Haley responded with the most unimaginable answer of only 2 words. Ew, no. I was devastated and deeply mortified. I'm not sure how I managed, but I watched from afar with a wounded heart. I just know Caroline would never do this to me. After leaving the dance, I decided to take a walk in the cool spring night to reflect on the day's events, taking the opportunity to bring back some items to the community center. And we completed one of our bundles in the boiler room, opening the bulletin board quest. Before heading back home, we reached level 5 farming and selected the tiller profession. Day 25 of spring was yet another rainy day, so we headed down to Marnie's to purchase some more hay. Thank goodness she was actually here today. This day we took it pretty easy by collecting wood and foraging along the way. We found this insanely cute forager's hat inside of a tree. Don't ask me why it was in a tree. I sincerely don't know. It quickly became my new favorite hat. A bonus is that we're actually not bald in this hat compared to our last one. We visited the new owner of the previously abandoned house, Pokey, who offered a variety of hats. However, purchasing a new hat would have to wait for a later time. We returned home to feed our poor starving chickens, but the true highlight of the day was discovering that our pets can wear hats. I mean, come on, isn't that just too precious? Now Estrella is fully equipped for any potential danger with her new dwarf helm. We spent the rest of the day fishing. It was at this point that I realized that the season was actually coming to an end, and we might need money if we want to have crops for summer. So I got right to fishing. We made some pretty good money before heading into our very last Friday of the season. On day 26, we woke to a very interesting visit from Demetrius, who gave us the option to culture mushrooms or host a colony of fruit bats. Being the nerdy animal lover that I am, of course I selected the fruit bats. We made and collected our very first jar of mayonnaise before heading to the mountains to fish away the day and hopefully save enough money to afford seeds in a few days. With aspirations of having a large field for summer, the pressure was on. I was really starting to feel it. After an entire day of fishing, I finally returned home to sell my catch, and was pleasantly surprised by the number of fish that we actually caught. We headed to bed for the night, and unsurprisingly, we reached level 6 fishing. And all of our hard work truly did pay off, making almost 3K. Day 27 of spring was yet another rainy day. We woke up to find our barn construction completed, but we actually forgot to purchase our cow. Pleased with the money we made from the previous day, we headed up to the mines where we spent the entire day, making it to level 80. And we were rewarded with these fire boots. No pun intended. And just like that, we were on our very last day of our very first spring. We woke up to yet another rainy day. Can you believe it? We headed down to Marnie's once again to buy more hay for our chickens because once again they ran out of food because it's been so rainy. This time, however, we did remember to purchase our very first cow, which was really exciting. Once again, I was feeling pretty guilty about having made a big purchase while trying to save money, so I headed up north to fish. I know a cow will be well worth the money, but I have no idea what to expect for summer, so I was feeling pretty anxious about it, you know? We must have been so excited that we headed to bed really early, like 9 p.m. early. And I guess it wasn't for nothing because we were gifted with the most mysterious and a little spooky omen during the night. We'll have to wait until next time to discover the meaning of the mysterious owl noises that we heard and take on our first summer in Stardew Valley. So, until then.